Welcome back, everybody. Today is Tuesday, March the 31st. I can't believe it. We're almost into April. Well, today is a new day. It's a different day, but it's also another day to keep following Jesus Christ. I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a pastor, and I'm a friend. And as always, you guessed it, let's get to it. In Psalm 44, verse 1 and 8, we see a name for God, and that name is Elohim. And Elohim means that God is the great creator and sustainer of all of life. And who God is the same in the past, in the present, and also in the future. In verses 1 through 3, we see that God, Elohim, is the God of the past who saved his people. In verse 3, it says, "For not by their own sword did they win the land, nor did their own arm save them." It was God who saved them, not by their own power or their might or their resources or their technology, but it was Elohim, the great creator and sustainer, who saved his people in the past. And that is the same God who sustains his people in the present and in the future, as we see in verse 8. And again, in verse 6, it says, not in my bow do I trust, nor can my sword save me." It is not our technology, our money, our resources, our power that will save us. It is the same God in the past who saves us in the present and in the future. And that is Elohim, the great creator and sustainer of all of life. God has sustained his people throughout all of history. And if you look back through the history of pandemics, God has sustained his people through things like the Spanish influenza, the Black Plague, and it is Elohim who will sustain his people in our day and age right now through the COVID-19 pandemic. So trust in God, trust in who he is, and he is Elohim. He is the great creator and sustainer of all of life. And right in the middle of this text, in verse 4, it says, "You are my King, O God." This is who your God is. He is Elohim, the great creator and sustainer of all of life, and who will sustain you through this moment. Yesterday we asked the question, what did the disciples fail to see about Jesus? Even after all of the time that they've been with him and all of the things that Jesus has told them. And the answer is that Jesus, the Son of Man, his mission was all about his Father's kingdom and not their own kingdom, and not their own comfort. You see, the disciples saw Jesus partly as a political savior, someone who would come and bring comfort to their Roman uncomfortableness. You know, following Jesus isn't about our kingdoms. It's not about our comfort. This is how fans of Jesus see Jesus. What can Jesus do for me and my comfort? But followers of Jesus see Jesus in a totally different way, in a totally different perspective, the perspective of the Word. This is how followers of Jesus see him. In chapter 8, verse 34, he says, "And calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, 'If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me.'" Man, what a totally different perspective. What a totally different way to look at Jesus. Denial, suffering. But this is how followers of Jesus see Jesus. Not our own kingdoms, not our own comfort, but the mission of the Father. So a question we must ask is, how do we see Jesus? And the challenge is that we would see Jesus according to the Word and how the Word reveals Jesus to truly be. And it is that Jesus is worth it, and he is worthy of it. So follow Jesus, the Jesus that the Word reveals to be. Today's reading is from Mark chapter 9, verses 14 through 29. Mark chapter 9, verses 14 through 29. Two questions for you today in your reading. Number one, what do we see that Jesus has power over? And number two, in verse 24, What is the medicine to unbelief? Today we are praying for all of the amazing parents out there. And yes, parents, you are amazing. You know, at the beginning of spring break, I was like, yes, I'm gonna explore what Sabbath really means, and I'm gonna explore this rest, because it's been so crazy. And then reality quickly set in, and I realized with a 4.5-month-old baby and a very, very energetic 5-year-old that my plans quickly went out the window. And I realized how tired I was at the end of the day. I realized that I could hardly get anything done that I wanted to. And it was a success if the house was still up and it didn't burn down and the laundry was done and all of those kinds of things. And it was really good for me to walk a mile in my wife's shoes and realize how much of a full-time job being at home with children is, but it's also a overtime job as well. Don't get me wrong. Parenting is probably one of the hardest jobs, but one of the most rewarding. But it is difficult, and it is not easy. So be grateful to your parents. Children, teens, even if you're out of the house, call or text your parents and say thank you. Thank you for everything. Each day is a new day, but it's not always easy to follow Jesus. But let me tell you this, it is always worth it. Jesus is always worthy of it for us to follow him. Lord willing, we'll see you guys tomorrow.